The myth that pure-blooded Native Americans no longer exists, that we are all simply mixed beyond recognition. It's a false narrative.
That mestizos are now the new face and the rightful inheritors of indigenous identity.
This narrative is not only false, it is a weapon of erasure.
To say that indigenous people have vanished into mixture is to erase the countless nations that still live, breathe, resist, and survive.
From the Amazon rainforests, where the Yanomami and Ashaninka guard their territories, to the Aymara and Quechua highlands of the Andes.
From the Quiche and Mam villages of Guatemala to the Nahua and Tarahumara mountains of Mexico.
To dismiss them or to claim that their identity has dissolved into mestizaje is to repeat the colonizer's narrative. It is wrong, deeply wrong, for someone of mixed ancestry to proclaim themselves as indigenous while ignoring the lived reality of full indigenous nation. To have indigenous ancestry is not the same as being indigenous. A mestizo is not an indigenous person, but an extension of one.
Mestizos inherit multiple ethnicities, often with European lineage. And with that lineage came the privileges of colonial society.
Historically, mestizos were not the oppressed. They became administrators of colonial power, overseers of indigenous labor.
Look to Mexico after independence. The new republic was ruled by mestizo elites who stripped indigenous communities
of their communal lands through laws like the Ley Lerdo of 1856.
The Ley Lerdo of 1856 sold off indigenous ejidos under the promise of progress. Who bought them? Mestizo elites, who expanded their estates on the backs of native farmers. The Nahua, the Otomi, the Mixtec, the Maya were left landless in their own homelands. In Peru and Bolivia, mestizo landowners tightened the chains of gamonalismo,
Mocking their languages as inferior, while consuming the fruits of their labor.
In Guatemala, during the rise of coffee exports, it was mestizo and Ladino elites who enslaved Maya communities through vagrancy laws,
forcing entire villages to work on plantations. The blood of the Quechua and the Quiche watered coffee fields, and the suffering has not ended. Even today, in Mexico, Peru, Guatemala, and across Latin America,
mestizos mock indigenous people and laugh at the accents of indigenous tongues.
They demand assimilation and treat brown bodies in huipiles and polleras as symbols of backwardness.
In Mexico City, indigenous street vendors are insulted as dirty. In Peru, Quechua-speaking women are still spat upon in markets.
In Guatemala, Maya people are treated as invisible in their own ancestral lands.
And yet, in this same world, some mestizos dare to turn around and claim, we are indigenous too. They pick up our identity when it suits them.
When it gives them spiritual depth, when it wins them academic prestige, when it gains them a sense of belonging.
But where were they when our languages were outlawed? When indigenous offsprings were forced into assimilation schools?
Where were they when soldiers massacred villagers in Guatemala?
When Mayan communities were burned in acts of genocide? When Zapatistas rose to fight and be heard?
When Shining Path militants and Peruvian soldiers unalive Quechua peasants?
The blood spilled was indigenous. The dispossession was indigenous. The silence was indigenous. Yet you claim to be indigenous.
Don't claim to be indigenous when you haven't walked in our shoes nor uplifted our communities.
Mestizos were not erased. They were rewarded. They inherited power. They governed republics that called us savages.
And now, centuries later, to claim the mantle of indigeneity is not humility, it is theft. It is to steal the last fragile space where indigenous voices fight to be heard. It is ego dressed as solidarity.
It is the colonizer's tongue, spoken by the colonizer's descendant.
Indigenous erasure does not only come from governments that declared us extinct, it also comes from mestizos who declare themselves our replacement. Being indigenous is more than just a name. It is more than the trace of blood in your veins. Being indigenous means survival.
Being indigenous is more than just a name. It is to pick weapons and fight.
It means carrying the weight of genocide, the wound of dispossession, and still standing.
Being indigenous means you still wear the face of your ancestors.
Indigeneity is not claimed in comfort. It is lived in struggle, in oppression, in every last breath for survival. It means your language lives on your tongue, your ceremonies in your breath, your land in your heartbeat.
It is carried in the scars of colonialism.
in the resistance of nations who refuse to disappear.
It is not a banner to raise when it suits you. It is the memory of survival carved into the body.
To be indigenous is to live in defiance of erasure. It is survival, resistance, and presence. It is ancestral memory made flesh. It is to guard the flame of memory so that the children yet unborn know they descend not from myths or symbols, but from a people who endured.